Hello. It's been a while since I've been on, but the Supreme Court's just calling me and I can't stay silent. I've always had an interest in a lot of this. As an undergrad, my degree was in American history, and I made sure to take a class taught by one of the law professors in constitutional history. And as a high school student, advanced placement, got a five. Hey, it's a long time ago. So interested a lot in the Constitution. The first thing they say about the American Supreme Court, it's always political. At times, the makeup of the court will act with a lot more delicacy in dealing with political issues than others. In some cases, it's blatant and it's bad. And bad sometimes depending on where you're sitting. Actually, most of the time where you're sitting. One of the older cases I like to talk about is Dred Scott v. Stanford. It's a pre-Civil War case. The book to read is Slavery, Law, and Politics, the Dred Scott case in historic perspective. It's not an easy read. To net this thing out, the Southerner, who was the Chief Justice, wanted an outcome and did his darndest to get there. Okay. And bad and political, well, think about something like Brown versus Board of Education. Now, I'll say Chief Justice Warren in that case actually worked really hard to come up with a unanimous decision. They actually reheard the case. They just didn't go in and do it. He worked very hard to come up with a unanimous decision. And well, many of these things seem like they should be painfully obvious from the plain text, that the idea that separate but equal can somehow ever be equal was utter nonsense. The, the thing to say, people will often, oh no, it's just straightforward, just plain text. Yeah, but you've got to read some decisions sometimes and see where they've taken the plain text and tortured it. And it's not any one political view. They sometimes will do this. And the other one is a balancing test. And so the Supreme Court will make these rules, but how they can balance this. Think about something like the right of free speech. Say that I was a person who had some sort of security clearance and I wanted to just like get on and do a whole discussion with all kinds of super top secret stuff that I'm not supposed to reveal. The plain text of the First Amendment really says I should be able to do that. I will face consequences. We don't necessarily like that. And even in a balance, sometimes it's hard. I remember a decision decades ago in Illinois where a group of Nazis wanted to do this march in a community that had a large number of Holocaust survivors. The American Civil Liberties Union actually defended the Nazis. Say, well, government should be picking winners and losers. In many ways, you should find that morally repugnant. That rally, it's hard to not see it as disgusting, at least from my viewpoint. And anyone who doesn't, I question. I have questions. I'll leave it at that. Two cases that had me talking. One of them was United States versus Skrmetti. The other one is Mahmoud v. Taylor. Skrmetti, oh, pretty gory. I've seen another recent decision that was equally cringe, and it was overturning the ban on bump stocks, where they spent all this time trying to say a machine gun, you have to pull the trigger once. But if I put pressure on the trigger and keep a tension so that the bump stock does its job, what's the difference? It's a distinction without a difference. With Skrmetti, it affirmed states banning trans care. And they spend so much time trying to say, we're not discriminating. The only thing we're saying is we won't allow puberty blockers and any kind of surgical intervention or hormones for anyone who's actually trans. But we're saying, no, we don't mean that. It's only if you have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, gender identity. Okay. Yeah, but by definition, that really defines a trans person. We'll allow hormones, we'll allow puberty blockers for all kinds of other things, but not them on purpose. They called it as one class and said, you guys, and I should make a rude gesture right now. You can't spend all this time trying to say, no, no, no. What they're allowing is, hey, if you want to stay in the closet, go right ahead. That's the only option. We will not allow, if you're under the age of 18, anyone to help you. And they justify it as well by talking about medical controversy. Let's talk about the controversies. And particularly point to some other countries like the UK for one. The UK CAS report. They put together this group. They specifically excluded those who are researchers or provide care to trans patients. The idea was to see, well, they will come with bias. Then they purposely met with groups that were anti-trans, had a clear bias. One they labeled as activists, the other ones they labeled as, oh, just scientists. No, the whole reason they exist is to work against transgender. That better, I think, defines an activist than someone who chooses to perform care for transgender patients, perhaps as part of a broader practice. So endocrinologists, general practitioners. I don't think many of them are exclusively seeing trans patients. And this has happened a number of times. And these studies that these countries have used to justify their change in the care regime were not peer reviewed. When peer reviews have appeared around these reports, they are savage. So this medical controversy is cooked. It's astroturf. It's not a real thing. So we're going to discriminate, but we're not discriminating. And there's a good reason for it. No, there isn't. And I'm not clear. I don't think there's a trial court record that supported that decision. Oh, this is justified. I think they just stepped in and did what they wanted to do. The second one, Mahmoud v. Taylor, there's another channel I like called Legal Eagle. And they've done a couple episodes on both these cases. Oh, they do a great job in their lawyers. Mahmoud v. Taylor is the idea that a school district in Maryland, they were including in their language arts curriculum books that, one of the books was about a puppy that went to a Pride event and got lost, and then it comes back. Just kind of a broad selection of different things. That curriculum, for a while, there had been a way for parents to opt out. Kind of like with sex ed. But there were two things that the school district found problematic. One of them being just the logistics. of having to, okay, I gotta shoot all the kids off to a different room because I'm going to read this crazy book. Um, Other was stigma. So we're going to read a book that happens to just touch on trans topics. Oh, half the class walks out, and the rest of it, if you're the trans kid, the one trans kid in the room. So remember, we're talking about maybe 2% of population. So in that classroom of 30 students, one maybe there's a sibling or friend, maybe friends of trans people in that room, but okay. So they took it away, and they were sued. And the Supreme Court is doing is saying you're infringing on their religious liberties. And as these lawyers will tell you, if you follow Legal Eagle, they're taking an older case and turning it on its head. The idea here is is significantly different. You're infringing on someone's religious liberties, for example, if someone's devout and say wearing a yarmulke or some other kind of religious wear, a turban for someone who's Sikh. Okay, you ban that. Here's why. The bar on that one's fairly high for the government to do that. It's active. Government is saying you can't do that. And the other example I would say, uh, there's some tension always occurring in correction systems around diet. And the court has typically said, you've got to provide, if they insist it's religious, you've got to provide them halal, you've got to provide them kosher. You can't skip on that. And there's something active about it. Or participating in, say, like a religious prayer. That is generally considered no, the school can't make you pray. On the other side of that is their option would be to homeschool if they just don't want to participate in public curriculum at all because it violates their religious viewpoint, is to homeschool or to attend a religious institution. In this Mahmoud v. Taylor, they've just turned that on its head and said, no, that's not right. That's not right. And what I've said in a number of cases, the legislation around religious freedom is really turned in a fairly nasty direction, where we're putting the religious sensibilities of one person over everyone else's. For example, um, it would be kind of like forcing someone to eat beef who is Hindu or pork if they're Muslim or Jewish. Why do you get to decide? What are your religious sensibilities? And now, like classroom, they just can't do it. No, they talked about ideology, and it's interesting to listen to the oral argument because, and if you look at the dissent by Justice Sotomayor, she provides like the entire text of one of these books to make it clear this characterization that they used in their decision is absolutely untrue. That's not what's in there. And fundamentally, there are two things that came out of the questioning. One of them is a disgust. That's pretty clear. The other thing is sexualization. This is really common for the trans community, that our very existence is treated as sexualization. Um, why? What about it? Okay, because I'm trans, you start wondering about what the state of my genitals. That is not my problem. I'm not doing that. You are. You need to calm your bad self down. And and they talk about an ideology and sort of overriding one of people's traditional beliefs. Oh, you could be as say do whatever the heck you want, but they want to control what we think about it. No, no, we should know. And one of the key things I certainly recall, if I talk about my own transition narrative, but I also remember from a number of gay men I know over my life who, and of course, I'm old enough that Stonewall happened when I was quite young, but it was still pretty new. For a lot, would talk about a reaction sort of, I didn't know this was an option. So as we close off all knowledge, the idea is that they want to make sure that if their kid is trouble, they're questioning their own gender, we're they want to block that information. And what we know from studies is that when they're unsupported, they're significantly more likely to kill themselves. That's not good. No parent should want that. If you'd rather have your kid gone for good versus being trans, I got a problem with that. Yeah. And it really feels like the Supreme Court has really just stepped in and like, we're going to use our majority and we're going to do what the heck we want. We don't care. We don't care about these prior decisions. We don't care that our factual record is ludicrous. We don't care. We care about how we feel. I run into this far too often where someone really wants to make my existence and those like me about how they feel. I feel uncomfortable. I question my gender. Like that's a problem. I'll close by saying this. One, check out Legal Eagle. They do a great job with this. The second one is no matter how great a document you write, no matter what you put in place, it depends on those making the decisions and those that are picking them. It's been really clear with this court that they just feel empowered to do whatever they want. You don't just make stuff up. And I know sometimes, well, a lot of the times when I voted, I haven't been thrilled. However, I'm usually clear that the other alternative is is unacceptable. It would be harmful to people I love and the nation of my birth. It's going to take a long time to undo. I fall back to a quote from Martin Luther King that talked about see if I can do this right. The arc of history is long, um, but it bends towards freedom. And there's been a huge amount of progress. And yeah, it's true. It's a massive pushback. And you will see uh, probably in plenty of other states and perhaps at a federal level, there'll be an initiative to do the same kind of damage across the board. But stay strong, organize, put an end to this. Or you could be like me and leave the country. Uh, Talk soon.